And the last deck that we're going to be talking about in the Miyagi Academy review set for deck profiles is the Nubatama discard deck. Now I do want to take a look at Garmor if we get a chance, however I'm not entirely sure how to run that deck. I can't seem to make it work at all. If you guys have working deck lists, please let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to test that out and maybe make a video on it. But for now, let's take a look at the Kujikiricongo Nubatama deck. Anyways, starting off, again, we have Magetsu win because I didn't get an alternate starter, which kind of bugs me, but that's fine. Again, we're doing 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal. Pretty straightforward. We're going to be starting off with 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Dreadmaster as your grade 1. When placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, you can discard a card and draw 1. Then, if your Vanguard is Shura Stealth Dragon Kujikiricongo, you can Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses one of his or her Rearguards and returns it to their hand. Then they choose a card from their hand and discards 1. So pretty important thing to note here, if you do want to Soul Blast 1 while your opponent doesn't have any Rearguards, they do have to just discard a card, which is pretty cool actually. Adds a lot of pressure. This is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck, it's extremely powerful. Then we have 4 copies of the Stealth Rogue of the Night, Sakura Fubuki. When placed on Rearguard, if you have 3 or more units, you can discard a card from your hand and give this unit 3000 power until the end of the turn. If you have 1 or less face-up cards in your damage zone, you're going to be drawing a card and countercharging 1. So it acts as a cycle, it acts as an enabler for more counterblast, which is great, it's just a super good card on its own. And the final card will be Tempest Stealth Dragon Fuki. This is way stronger and more consistent in this deck than it was in the Storm deck, and its ability is that on Rearguard, if one of your opponent's Rearguards was sent to their hand during this turn, it gets 6000 power. You're probably going to proc that almost every turn in this deck. On to the grade 2s, we have Stealth Dragon Magetsu Gale again. I know it's not the Magetsu deck, but it's just a good card. When placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, you can Counterblast and Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and give this card 6000 power. The ability in itself is just fantastic. Then you have, at the end of the battle that it attacked, you can put it into your soul, return one of your Rearguards to your hand, which means you can trigger things like Dreadmaster again on your next turn. Then we're running 4 copies of Momentary Stealth Rogue Tsunamasa. On Rearguard, when it's placed, you can give a unit on your field plus 3000 power, and if that unit's a grade 3, you can Soul Charge 1. At the end of the battle that it attacked, you can Soul Charge 1 and return it to your hand. Simple and straightforward card, pays its own cost by Soul Charging and then Soul Blasting. It's just really good in that way. And the final grade 2 is 4 copies of Shura Stealth Dragon Kujikiricongo. When placed, if your Vanguard is Shura Stealth Dragon Kujikiricongo, this unit gets plus 3000 power till the end of the turn. Then you can Counterblast 2 and return all cards in your opponent's Rearguard in the same column as this unit to their hand. Your opponent then chooses the same number of cards that they just bounced and discards them. So essentially it's removal, but it's really weird, awkward one. You're Counterblasting 2 to usually bounce 2 and make them discard 2. Unfortunately, you can't proc the ability in the same way that you do with Dreadmaster, but it's still very strong on its own. On to the grade 3s, we have 4 copies of Shura Stealth Dragon Kujikiricongo. It has the act ability on Vanguard that once a turn, if your opponent's hand has 4 or more cards, you can Counterblast 1 and make them discard. So that's great, like just amazing on its own. But it also has the ability that when your opponent's Rearguard is returned to their hand due to your ability, your opponent cannot call cards with the same grade as the returned unit until the end of the turn. It's busted. Like, it's actually so strong. If for whatever reason they have a grade 0 on their field, you can typically bounce a grade 0, 1, and 2, and then you just win the game. So, that's great. There's no cost to this ability other than bouncing one of their cards. This is gonna win you the majority of the games with this card. It's really important to pay attention to your opponent's drive checks, as this is pretty telling for them, and you can kind of play around that in that sense. Along with that, we're going to be running 3 copies of Stealth Dragon Voidmaster. Again, when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, your opponent can't intercept this turn, and this card gets plus 3000 power. It also has the ability that on Vanguard and Rearguard, after it attacks, you can Counterblast 1 and bounce one of your opponent's Rearguards. So that again triggers with Kujikiricongo, and you make this great cycle just between the 2 of them. On to what is most likely the strongest card in the deck when it goes off, Stealth Beast Koku Shigarasu. On Vanguard or Rearguard, you can Soul Blast 3 and discard 2 Sentinels from your hand. This unit gets plus 15,000 power till the end of the turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3, return all of your opponent's Rearguards to their hand, and if you returned 1 or more, your opponent chooses 5 cards from his or her hand and discards them. Like, it's so good. If your opponent has 1 card on the field, you can essentially bounce that, make them discard 5. If they still have 4 cards in their hand for whatever reason, you can use Kujikiricongo again and make them discard 1 more, so that's 6. You can use Dread a couple times, and that's 7, 8, or 9, sometimes 10. Like, it's amazing how far you can push your opponent down with this deck. This is by far probably the most fun deck of this set. It doesn't always work, I'm not going to pretend it does, but when it does, you're going to feel like you have complete control almost the entire game. Anyways, that kind of wraps things up for this video. I'd like to thank Decimus, Akuyaza, and DigitalDrew92 for all their help on Patreon. If you guys would like to support the channel, please check the link in the description down below. And with all that being said, this has been Miracle Trigger, and I hope you guys enjoyed this set. I'll see you in the next video.